So right now we have the next talk coming up. It's from Tiffany Bao. Tiffany, are you here?
Hi, Sumit. Yes, I am here.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And I know it's late evening there in the US. So we really appreciate your support, and we welcome you to ShaktiCon. So for the participants, Tiffany Bao is an assistant professor at Arizona State University. She received her PhD at Carnegie Mellon University, and her research interests are in the area of software security, particularly focusing on the techniques, measurement, and strategies to discover, assess, and defend software vulnerabilities. And this is going to be a very interesting talk. Tiffany will share her experience of CTF and introduce CTF-related research, which is cyber autonomy in software security. We all know that security researchers have been pursuing automated vulnerability detection techniques. However, the human bottleneck always remains a challenge. So in this talk, Tiffany will discuss, how we remove these bottlenecks because it requires automated techniques and intelligent decision making. And she's also going to leave you with some future steps that can mature the cyber autonomy into real world practice. So over to you, Tiffany, and yeah, looking forward to your talk.
Yep, thanks so much for the introduction. Let me start to share my screen with everyone. Just a second. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good, okay, now let's roll. So first of all, hey everyone, my name is Tiffany. And today I would like to just share my story with you and then talk about the research that I'm interested in. And also, I know like we're from the community of like minority, we're female, where we are also other minority people. I would like to also share some of my experience or feelings of, being a minority. All right, so let's first start with an interesting video. It's also something that's kind of like how I start to kick off my track of cybersecurity. So this happened when I was an undergrad student. That was in my year 2, and I happened to watch a movie. It's called War Games. I don't know if you have heard about that before, but it's an old movie. It has been 20 or even more years already. But this movie was very interesting. It has something very fun about cybersecurity. So I would just like start with there, and give me a second. Let me enable audio so that you will also be able to hear that.
You're really into computers, huh?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Dialing into the school's computer. They change the password every couple of weeks, but I know where they write it down.
Are those your grades?
Yeah. I don't think that I deserved an F. Do you?
You can't do that.
Already done. Do you have a middle initial?
K, Catherine. These are my grades.
How can anybody get a D in home ec?
If that's none of your business, can you erase this,
No,
please?
it's too late.
What are you doing?
I'm changing your biology grade.
No, I don't want you to do that. You're going to get me into trouble.
No, nobody can find out. There, you just got a C. Now you don't have to go to summer school.
Change it back.
Why? They can't possibly.
I said change it back.
Okay, okay.
I guess I better get going.
Thanks for the ride.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. 1 second. Let me put on my headphones back again. All right, just to confirm, you can still hear me, right? Good. Cool. Okay. First thing first, please don't do this. Please, please. I mean, when I show this to you, I didn't mean to tell you that this is the right way to do. This is like so cool, so that we need to do that. No, but I mean, this is just like a fun thing that really makes me attractive to cybersecurity, and I want to see that, you know, can I do that? Although I know that I'm not supposed to do it, but like just like technically speaking, if I will have that skill to become like a hacker, to become, you know, to have a better position in doing something in cybersecurity. So this really intrigues me, and it started my career as a cybersecurity people. And when I was in undergrad, there's no like cybersecurity specific program, unfortunately, but that really just opened in my mind and it made me determined to do cybersecurity as my life career. So, okay, yep. And then next is that, you know, after that, I start to get to know about CTF. Like many of you in this talk, I know that many of you have have joined a CTF team, play CTF, or at least have heard about CTFs before. So for me, I started to know about CTF since my second year, and then I started to play CTFs with those hackers. Like back then, they're not really hackers. Like mostly, they're just like students. We have a very little knowledge about cybersecurity, but we're interested in that, and we're interested in CTFs, and we started to play. And after that, you know, I just learned more and more about CTF, the cool things, especially, you know, cool competitions such as Defcon. And I know that in like a Defcon conference, it has not only the CTFs, it also has other different kinds of cool hacking techniques that people talk about, such as how to break your phone, how to, you know, break your car, how to pen test, do all different kinds of very interesting things. And that made me very attracted. And then after that, the more and more I play CTF, and then later on, you know, I went to Arizona State University as a professor. Then I joined a team. It's called the Warden of Overflow. I'm not sure if you heard about that, but this is a team who is currently organizing Defcon CTF, which is one of the top cybersecurity hacking competition. And we started since, I believe it's 2018. And yeah, I think it's 2018. This is our third year. It's very close to the qual right now. If you're interested, feel free to, you know, attend the qual, which is going to be around April 30th. Actually, now it's the time for us really focusing on preparing and organizing Defcon CTF qualification. It's pretty intensive, to be honest. I mean, it's a lot of work because we need to not only host all the technical components, but also come up with challenges. And usually those people who attended Defcon CTF, they're the top hackers. They were the top hackers, and you have to come up with cool challenge that is like really great challenge that please everyone and make everyone be interested in that. So those two are the pictures in 2018. This is the final of Defcon. If you've been there, you must be very familiar. Like usually there is a stage and the organization team are there. And then the other teams, they will be in different tables. They're just spread around in this entire, I would say like plaza-ish thing, like the room. And then just people play that for 8 hours. And you can see this is me on the right hand side. I didn't look very well because that was the time that I didn't sleep for, I think it's 48 hours. It's like 2 consecutive nights. I didn't manage to get any sleep because we're fixing different bugs. There's always unexpected issues coming up. So that was happening. All right. And then next is that I think it's 2018 or 2019. I started to attend some women exclusive, or say like women only CTF, which is pretty fun. I was very impressed that there are women specific CTFs such as Power of XX. I believe this poster is for year 2018. And that was the time that I found some of my female hacker friends, and then we just have a team, and then we attended. And I was very impressed, to be honest, because I found there are many teams over there, and also it's so competitive. I was honestly like surprised by the skills of our women hackers. I'm so proud of it. So those are the very fun part of, you become a CTF player, you play CTF, and then you attend attend as a host to host some of those very fun competitions. But as many of you have know about that, like being a CTFer, being a CTF player is pain, because there is always many things that you need to learn. There are always many things that you have to, just keep yourself there. It's like you become an actual athlete, right? So you need to keep practicing in order to make sure that you have the good status when you play the CTF. So here, what I'm showing is a calendar from CTF.time.org. So those are the CTF events that are showing. It's not the complete, like not all the CTFs in the world, but still you can see that there are so many CTFs. Basically, you can find CTFs almost every day, and especially during the weekends, because usually people will have more time during weekend. That's why usually many CTFs are hosted during the weekend. So you see that there are so many CTF games, and if you want to practice, you can always just find one and step on that. And also usually, CTF is kind of restless. There are different ways of CTF, but usually they're just like 12 hours, 48 hours, or even 72 hours restless. Sometimes you just so deprived of sleep because you don't want to stop. You don't want to sleep while other people are still making effort, right? And also sometimes they're so competitive, just like the Power of XX. I remember because that competition was held in Korea, and we don't have a good time. I was in US, and then the game, was held in the Korean timeline. And then there was time just the team play into the very late night, and then we worked the top, and we're very proud. And then we know that the winner, like the 10th, as long as you got the 10th position, you're good, you'll get some awards. So I just decided that, okay, let's just go to sleep. Not worried about that. There are only like 1 hour left. It should be fine for us just to sleep and just to secure the position. And actually, unfortunately, 1 hour later, which is the end of the game, we ended up with position 11. So just only one position close to this 10th position. But you can see how competitive it is. You just don't spend the last 1 hour, and our rank just dropped from the first position to the 11th position. And also there are many times you just realize that, oh, I got the key, but it's only 3 minutes, or it's only like a half an hour after the game. And of course that key won't count. It's very unfortunate, but there is like the moment you feel that, oh, I should have made this happen early, and maybe I should have just started early in order to get the key and then win extra credits for my team. So speaking of getting started, I know that some of you know about CTF, but you may haven't started yet. Honestly speaking, that's also the pain part for CTF, which is that the barrier, or say the bar, is a little bit higher than most of the other competitions. So you first of all need to write program properly. You need to know how to write program. You need to also be able to read other programs, especially for C, because usually there are many C or C++ related challenges. You also need to understand assembly languages like x86 or MIPS or different kind of instruction set. You need to understand how operating system works. You also need to know like things about web if you are interested in web challenges. Then you also need to learn like a database works, because usually there are vulnerabilities associated with the web that will have something like about database. You need to also learn database in order to understand vulnerabilities such as SQL injection. So there are many things that you have to learn in order to identify what's wrong from those programs or those applications. So after you learn about those applications, after you know why is this happening, like in the essentially what is happening, what is the system looks like, what is the server looks like, now you can officially start, because you won't be able to tell what is wrong until you know how it works. For example, like IDA Pro, I believe that many of you have used this before, right? So if you haven't used it before, and if you don't know about those contexts, when you look at this, it can be pretty overwhelming to you. You just don't understand why there are errors, and then there's a graph there, but what is the relationship between the graph and the actual program? So it will really like confusing. But the time that you get used to it, you maybe spend, like I would say like hundreds of hours of practice in order to really be familiar with it. And when I say be familiar with it, it's like not only just click around, but also be very efficiently identified and use the tool to achieve your goal. I mean, you just need to practice. You have to do this again. So keep yourself on the same page and keep yourself, be familiar with this tool all the time, especially that some of the tools that just keep changing, they just keep improving. So you also have to, make sure that you always catch up the latest tools, the latest version. And I feel that especially during the past 3 years, CTFs has been changed a lot. There are so many new techniques, and then like, new CTF players and the new teams emerging. And you can see a quick being there, like the development is so fast that you really have to keep practicing in order to keep yourself on the stage. Okay, so that's everything about CTF. So I, get interested in CTF, and then I also get interested in cybersecurity research, especially software security. And after I got my PhD, then I joined ASU as a tenure track assistant professor, as you already know. And this is a picture of the group that I joined, which is called Defcon. We have, right now we have 5 professors, and we have 30 plus PhD students. We have also many master and undergrad students who like to play CTFs and do very cool cybersecurity research with us. And this is a picture, I think it's from 2 or 3 years ago. It was an old picture. And now we're having more and more female students. I think last time when I did the statistics on our current group members, we have more than 1/3 of the students are female or like minority students, which we're very proud of. I know that this is not the end. We need to make more progress, but I'm very happy that during the past 3 years effort, we're having more and more minority students join in our security lab. So for those people, I can't just introduce them to you one by one, but I can have a very high level introduction about those people. I would like to divide them into 2 groups of people. So the first group of people, I would say they're the quote unquote good people. Like what they think is about like, oh, how to make the world more secure, how to defend against those attacks, how to secure the systems or the applications. And then there are also the bad people who obviously think about, how can I attack this application? How can I find a bug and make myself get a root, right? So there are 2 different kinds of people, and then they're kind of competing with each other, because there's always this nice defend and attack perspective. And actually it's nice that both people exist in a big security lab, because that is the way that they can co-evolve in order to make the world or make the applications, make software more secure in the end. So you really have to have them to combat with each other so that we can have a more and more like a better dynamic, so we can achieve a better and better security. And as I said, the ultimate goal for us is to make the world more secure. It's just like sometimes people would like to think that from a defense perspective, and someone would like to think about this from offense perspective, like find what's going on right now so that we can come up with a better solution, right? So, but ultimately, we want to make the world more secure. So how to make that, right? Maybe I think, there are many, many different ways, but I would like to talk about part of my research by telling you a story. And this story is about the WannaCry attack. I believe that many of you have heard about this WannaCry attack before. It was one of the biggest ransomware attack in history. So there was a story, and I would like to talk about this story in the in a order of time. So this attack happened in 2017 or 2018. I forgot. We will see that. I believe it is 2017. But then actually back to 2012, which was 5 years ago, NSA has already discovered this vulnerability. But NSA didn't disclose this vulnerability until 2017, January, when NSA learned about a possible leak about this vulnerability. So they realized that this is really the time for them to tell the software vendors so that they can release the patch, and then every, I'll call it citizen, but like every victim user will get a chance to patch the vulnerability. So in February 2017, NSA disclosed this vulnerability to the software vendor, which is Microsoft. And in March, Microsoft released this patch, which is pretty quick. I would say that Microsoft did a good job. And then 2 months after that, so keep in mind that it was 2 months after the release of the patch, WannaCry attack started. So by the time that attack started, it's already 2 months after the patch was released. But still, there are many people that hadn't patched themselves. And this ends up with 300,000 machines being affected by a WannaCry attack. And the attack cost 4 billion loss, which is really a lot. So I see two issues, or yeah, I would say two issues, or maybe three, but in general, like on the higher level, I would say two issues. One issue is in binary analysis techniques. Back to 2012, that was the time the NSA know it. And then back to 2017, that is the time the NSA disclosed the vulnerability. And before NSA disclosed the vulnerability, it was only NSA that discovered this vulnerability. So the question is that, why didn't I find this bug? Why didn't you find this vulnerability? Why didn't anyone else that find this vulnerabilities? And we know that if one of us managed to find this vulnerability, then we will go through the, the responsible disclosure process, and there will be a better chance, there will be maybe a higher chance that the software vendor, which is Microsoft, will be able to know about this vulnerability earlier so that they can release the patch earlier. And the root cause is that it's just like currently, unfortunately, analysis techniques are still not scalable enough, and it still heavily relies on human to find a bug. On the other hand, there is also issue in decision making. So first of all, NSA decided to withhold this vulnerability for 5 years. And also for users like you and me, or say for those victim users, there are 2 months over there for them to patch, but they just didn't patch within the 2 months. And also, I like to just ask yourself, how many times that you click the remind me later button when you see a security update in your computer? I have to confess that I did that, and did that for many times before. And in fact, if now, just like right now when I talk to you, and if there is a message popping up telling me that, hey, Tiffany, now is the time for you to update your security, like update your system and reboot, I will just click remind me later again. And then maybe later on, just forget about that. I will never get a chance to patch, or I will not be able to patch in time. So you see that there is issues in decision making, not only from the one who discovers the vulnerability, but also from the end users who is like the actual victim, because they just never bother to patch it on time, and that makes, or that leaves their their laptop or their operating system to be insecure. So, and also this is because those decisions are making ad hoc way, because when we look at this like a message, we see this like popping up window, we just make a decision right way. We don't really think about, oh, what is the pro and cons, and how should I weight the pro and cons so that I can make an optimal decision. Sometimes we have to click remind me later, because like right now, I know that I need to click it because I don't want to pause my talk. However, there are many times that I know that actually I'm idle. I know that actually I should weight security more than having the computer run. So, but because I don't have a systematic way to really weight the pro and cons, and that make me to make a suboptimal decision. All right. So from the story, that techniques are important, but techniques are definitely insufficient. And my research is cyber autonomy, which is a combination of both techniques and strategies to mitigate software vulnerabilities. And in my mind, I would like to have, like an intelligent system. I also just sometimes call it cyber bodyguard, that, it will be able to not only just find the bugs for your system, but also give you an intelligent decision for maybe you should patch it right away, or maybe you should do some other means in order to protect yourself. And then you may ask, like, why don't you just study this separately? There are people doing like vulnerability discovery or automatic exploit generation techniques. And there are also other people who like to tackle things like strategies, right? So then why do we, why, I mean, there are two separate people working on this already. Why do we want to have people like me to tackle both parts? And the reason for that is because actually techniques and decision, they complement with each other. And sometimes they mix it so well that you just need to have this knowledge and have the background for both two parts. So when we make decisions for offense or defense decisions, it requires us to know about the security domain knowledge. And also when we create binary analysis techniques, sometimes we need to know that what are the techniques that are most important? What techniques should we prioritize when we develop them? And in order to know what techniques matters, because there's so many different techniques that you can create. So in order to know what matters, you need to understand, given the current strategy, what are the current bottleneck, so that you know which technique that you want to improve. And for me, my research is to build a framework that can systematically reason about how to mitigate software security and use a holistic approach, combining both techniques and decision strategies. Okay, so that's pretty much the high level of my research, and part of the Defcon, my lab's research. And due to the limit of time, I'm not going to talk about like every piece of it, but I would like to share one or two with you guys, which is a very interesting story. It's nicely combined both strategy and techniques. So I'd like to start with the first one, which is the decision-making part, which is how to come up with an optimal decision, an optimal strategy that will help you to decide how to do with the software vulnerability. And to tell about this, let's start with a cyber grant challenge. Cyber Grant Challenge is a competition hosted by DARPA in year of 2017. So in the final of Cyber Grant Challenge, there are 7 teams coming with each other, and they're all machines. It's like CTF, but there's no human in the CTF. So every machine is a player, and then they just play against each other. Oh, actually, let me rephrase that. It's not in 2017. It's 2016. It's 2016 August. So as I said, there are 7 teams, and they're given about 100 vulnerabilities. In this game, there are 95 rounds. Each team, so they want to find a bug, and if they find a bug, they can use this bug to attack other team in order to win offense score. And then meanwhile, they can patch themselves, and according to the patch, they can win the according defense score and also performance score, depending on if the patch will affect the performance of original server or original service. So it's really like the attack defense game in CTF, but this is the way that, but in this game, every team is not human team. They're the actual machines, fully automatic, compete with each other. And then the total score is a summary of this 3: offense, defense, and the performance. So we look into this Cyber Grant Challenge, we look into this competition, and I was especially looking at these strategies. So given this game, how should we play it? If, for example, if I find a vulnerability, should I just use this vulnerability to attack other people's right away, or should I just put it on hold? Because if I attack other people, there is a chance that other people realize or capture my attack, and they may be able to generate their own attack because they receive my attack. So they kind of can learn from attack that I launched them. So there is a pro and con, there is a balance between attack and defend. And it's not always the case that you should attack right away. And it turns out that my strategy will be able to help Shellfish, who was the original 3rd position team, to rank 2nd if they had applied my model for decision making. So this is nice. It means that we do need a better decision making protocol or decision making scheme that will be able to lead us for a better result. And then we just keep looking into this because we want to look at more broader work, and then we also do a literature review to see what has been done in terms of those kinds of vulnerability discovery and decision process. And very interestingly, we see that in a past model, for example, there's one called Cyberhawk, and there is also another one published by Schramm et al. So they found that for those 2 models, because of their assumption, and then they conclude that for a game like this, at least one player will attack the other people. And also, if someone decides to attack other people, they should always attack right away. But it's actually different from what we found. And that is because they have put, assumptions that are too strong, and then that stopped them from finding the actual truth. So for our model, we actually found that very interestingly, if players can retaliate, meaning that they got something, they got an attack, and then revenge on the other people. So if players can retaliate, then it's actually possible that neither players will attack each other, which is nice. That means that we have a very peaceful world, right? So we also call this as mutual deterrence. I don't know if you heard about this before, but it's a dynamic. It's a maintenance of peace between opposing sides, right? And then by each having retaliation capacity to deter the other people from initiating conflict. And very realistic example will be nuclear weapons, right? So because of mutual deterrence, there's no one in this world will dare to really just fire a nuclear weapon, because they know that if that happens, they might be got retaliated by the other people, and that will be like no one will win the game. Everyone just lose into the game. So it's great. Then the question is, how can we create mutual deterrence? We have to give people this retaliation capacity. And then the question is, how can we give people this retaliation capacity given the fact that not everyone are sophisticated CTF players, not everyone are expert or hackers? Can we come up with automatic technique that will enable everyone to retaliate other people if they receive an attack? And this comes to my research. One of my research is to think about this question: how can we do automatic retaliation, or in other words, we call it automatic exploit reuse. So to be more specific, we focus on control flow hijacking exploits, which in this exploit, they can alter the program execution and then run attacker's malicious instruction, or AKA payload or shellcode, right? For example, this is a very simple control flow hijacking example, just in case that you don't know about that before. So suppose that we have a buffer overflow here, and then on the right-hand side, I'm showing the stack. There are local variables stored on the stack, and this vulnerability suffers from a buffer overflow. You see that variable S, it has only 20 bytes, but actually S can receive 50 bytes. So that means that the attacker can overflow this 20 byte argument S and overwrite the saved return address. Right, so here is the vulnerability, and someone can just overwrite the return address and then maybe point it back to the shellcode, and then they can manipulate the execution using this new shellcode. Then the question for us is that, suppose we want to retaliate. So we have our own purpose. We want to put our new shellcode into this attack. Then how can we automatically replace the shellcode, replace that by one that we want, so that we can have a new exploit? And we call this shellcode transplant. And to be more formally, the question of shellcode transplant will take a vulnerable program and an original exploit, as well as a shellcode to be replaced as input, and it will output a new exploit that will trigger the vulnerability, the original vulnerability, the same one, and also execute the replacement shellcode. Okay, so we come up with this technique that enables to do that. I'm not going to talk about the details. There are many things. I don't know if you heard about symbolic execution or concolic execution. We use that, and then we use different way that we kind of change the layout of the shellcode so that we can satisfy those necessary conditions in order to trigger the vulnerability. And then now I would just talk about the evaluation. So we managed to have this technique, and in the evaluation, we test our technique. We call it shell swap. We test the system with 20 original exploits from the Cyberbrand challenge and 5 replacement shellcode from 3 different authors. So in this case, we have 20 times 5 testing cases, because we want to try that for each of the original exploits and each of the replacement shellcode, how many of them can we manage to generate a new exploit that triggers the original vulnerability associated with the exploit, and also executes the new replacement shellcode. And we found that shell swap in total, in summary, shell swap was able to automatically generate 85 out of 100 new exploits. And in the design of shell swap, there are 3 different components. So the one in green, we call it just basic method. And if basic method failed, we will use the second technique called layout remediation. And if that failed, we then use path initials, like 3 steps, one by one. The other 2 is more skillful, it's a more challenging, more difficult than the basic method. But so you always just want to start with the simple method, and if simple method failed, you then use the second and the third method. So we found that every method counts. Every method has its own role, has its own contribution. That means that all those methods are necessary in order to build up this entire system, shell swap. And also, we evaluate the performance of shell swap. We measure the time that shell swap spent to generate those 85 exploits. And very interestingly, we see that there are 60 out of 85 exploits can be generated within 3 minutes. We do see a long tail phenomena, meaning that like from the 80th to the 85, which is this part, it definitely spends a lot of time. But for most of the exploits, it can be generated within a very short amount of time. It's like 3 minutes. And this means that, you can turn the technique, let shell swap run, and then go get your coffee. And then by the time you come back, your exploits for yourself, customize it for yourself, is done. You can have an exploit of yourself, which is quite amazing. So this is a very interesting and fancy technique. And actually, you see that when we're motivated, it's the like strategy. It is the start of this technique is the strategy, is that we realize that only we have this retaliation technique that will make us to build up this possible cyber deterrence, the mutual deterrence in the cyberspace. And that is quite interesting. And this kind of like form up my research. I hope that we need to have, of course, we need to have both strategy and technique, but also more important, I hope that our technique can be developed in a more directional way. We don't do this whenever a technique has happened, it's good. No, we want to prioritize that in order to really find the right technique to develop or to improve so that we can make our cyberspace more secure. And then come back to shell swap, this technique. We show that automatic exploit reuse is possible. And also mutual deterrence is possible in cyberspace from both the technical, which is shell swap, and strategic, which is the decision-making model from these 2 perspectives. All right, so now's the time for us to talk about the future. We talk about this very interesting story. So like we find this very interesting technique based on the finding of strategies. Then what will happen in the future? How should we improve in the future to achieve the goal of cyberspace peace, right? So of course, we need to keep advancing binary analysis techniques. As I mentioned, vulnerability or binary analysis techniques, most of them, they're still not scalable, especially for those dynamic ones. There's no way for you to really verify that the program is 100% secure, especially for large program like the softwares that we're using right now. So we really want to think about that. How can we develop techniques, more scalable techniques that will help us to find those bugs, or say to help us to prioritize the discovery of bugs if we have to go through all paths or all possibilities in the program states. And then the next is that we need to keep maturing the game model. There are many things that we need to think about. For example, right now in my model, I only consider 2 players. I can apply that in like a 7-player scenario, such as the Cyber Grant Challenge game. But actually, we apply this model again and again for a single player. One player has 6 components opponent, and then we just apply this game model for 6 times. Then the question is, how can we make this game to just extend it from 2-player to 3-player? And it turns out that even extending from 2-player to 3 players, it can be pretty complicated. For example, you could do something like player A attacks player B, but then player B, if he wants to retaliate, he doesn't really retaliate or say play back, revenge back on player A. He will actually pass an attack to player C, which can be like a even more stronger, like a very strong player. And then player C will then revenge back to player A. So it can be like a 3-body problem. They just like go through the cycle, and that increased the complexity of the game. So there are many things that we need to look into in order to mature the game model, make this game model more comprehensive, but also make this game still solvable within a reasonable amount of time. And then the third is about, can we come up with more different decision-oriented techniques? Shelf swap is one of them. It's a technique that we realize important and useful because of decision. Then are there other techniques that we also kind of invented because of decision or impact the decision because of the existence of such technique? For example, I'm thinking about like, can we make our patching more like, faster? Because right now, there's no way for us to just like we can do automatic patching, but still it's gonna take some time to really deliver this patch to a people. And also, there are some scenarios that users really want to come to and control, and they don't want to enable automatic patching. So then the question is, can we really patch this in the runtime without harming the current existing environment? Maybe you want to have maybe 2 versions or something else, but like this is something that is going to be interesting to think about, how to develop more decision-oriented techniques. And in the long term, I also think about the interplay between technique and decision making. So if, say, the world is a big game, everyone is involved in this game, in the cybersecurity game, and then there are people developing more and more advanced technique, then can we evaluate the merit of the technique based on how this technique could possibly change the game or change people's behavior, change people's decision makings in this big cybersecurity game? So in order to do that, we need to have a framework that can just keep running and keep evaluating techniques. And also we need a better interfaces for techniques to be plugged in the evaluation framework so that it won't increase extra burdens for those technical creator, technique developer when they build up those techniques. And even longer term, I realized that, in order to make our cyberspace peace, it won't be not just technique and decision. Sometimes you need to depend on maybe law or policy. And I remember that when I was talking to a security professor, I was talking about this very interesting technique, shelf swap. And this professor asked me a very interesting question. So he asked us, why do you want to have this technique? Will this technique really be helpful? Because if, like, for people like you and me, we cared about law, we cared about those like policies. If we really use this technique and we just attack other people whenever we receive attack, then we may commit a crime because we attack other people. Maybe for like the black hat, the real black people, they don't care because they violate the law all the time. But for us, we're nice people, we're white hats. We don't want to do that. Then we just kind of have a barrier there to stop us from retaliating other people. And there's no way for shelf swap to come into play. And I was really thinking about this. I think this is a very interesting point of view. Because think about this. This is like, the question of whether or not it is legal for you to have a gun, right? So if you have a gun in your home, and if someone breaks in your home, can you protect yourself? And then can you use this gun to protect yourself, right? So, and this comes into play of law and policy. What is the correct law that will also give us this right to protect ourselves when it is necessary in cyberspace? Although we may use something that is, I would say, brutal, like quote unquote brutal, but like a little bit more aggressive, right? Like attack other people. Then we need a better law that can regulate the behavior and also protect us as, you know, a citizen in the cyberspace. All right, so that's pretty much for my talk. I would like to give everyone more time for us to talk about, you know, discuss this topic or talk about more interesting things. And also I saw questions from the chat, and I will answer the questions later on. So for now, let me just quickly conclude what I have talked now. So I hope that my talk give you, you know, very interesting aspects of cybersecurity and CTF. And I hope that you will be able to agree with me that hacking is a cool thing, but also hacking is pain, because you have to, you know, do a lot of practice in order to really gain that skill. However, hacking is fun. So be a hacker in a good way. All right, that's pretty much everything I have. Feel free to contact me. I'm you're very welcome to talk to me for, you know, issues about maybe research you want to do for cybersecurity, or maybe your concerns about CTFs or something that you are currently experienced related to education, career, cybersecurity, etc. Feel free to shoot me an email. And also, this is my personal webpage. Also, I would like to advertise for our lab. So we are recruiting people. We're recruiting not only PhD students, but also intern, like we call it apprenticeship. So it is a program that we welcome undergrads or master students who are interested in work with us, who are interested in doing further cybersecurity research. So if you are interested in working with us, become a hacker and do those fancy cybersecurity research, you're welcome to shoot me an email, talk to me, or check this link so that you can see more detailed information about this program. All right, now I am open to all the questions, but let me first answer Shrem. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, but let me answer the question first. So the question is, how do you think CTFs and game theory can be connected? What could be some possible research directions? Very, very good question. So one direction would be like in CTFs, there are attack defense game. So what is the best strategy for you to play this game? As I said, there are possible techniques that people can sneak your network. Actually, for like Defcon or other attack defense game, usually they release the PCAP of the network traffic. Sometimes, like there's a delay, but they will release the network traffic. And then there are good teams that they would like to reverse engineer or do a forensics on those network traffic, and then the extractor attack, and then understand your attack, and then use your attack against you if you haven't patched yourself, or use that attack to attack other teams. So although they cannot get the first blood, they can still win some scores, right? So the question from a game theorist perspective is whether or not you should start attack, even though you know how to attack. You want to make sure that maybe when is the best time for you to attack. Maybe you don't want to attack right away because you know that the PCAP will be released in 5 minutes, right? Maybe you actually want to wait for a second, or maybe wait until the like very close to the end of the game, so that even though you launch this attack, and even though they get your PCAP, there won't be enough time for them to reverse engineer your attack and then attack it back to you or other teams. So those are just like one possible ways for you to to like really think about what is the right strategy, how to use game theory to come up with a good strategy to attack other people. Okay. Question: attackers can behave in many ways to escape from being caught. Yes. How can we model this scenario? Yes, that's a very good question too. So in a game theory setup, you could have a parameter to kind of describe the detection of attack. And actually right now there is, in my current game theory setup, I do have a detection parameters, like by a chance, if someone launch attack, then by like maybe 95% of the chance or by 80% of the chance that their attack will be caught by the opponent, which is like maybe the defender. So in that way, we can encode the possibility, make this game as a probabilistic setup so that we can reason about what is the optimal strategy in a probabilistic way.
Thank you, Tiffany. There's also one more question. Is there some way to combine fuzzing with vulnerability discovery by prioritized path exploration to identify if an access violation found by fuzzing can actually result in a complete exploit?
That's a good question. It's a very technical question. I like it. For me, I also published some papers about fuzzing. So I would say that if you know about fuzzing or know more specific like AFL, usually you have a seed, you generate more input, and then you want to select those input you think is more valuable, and then keep mutate based on those input. And that process is called input prioritization. So input prioritization essentially is a way for you to prioritize your path, right? Because input lead to execution path, especially for AFL, because they are a edge prioritized fuzzer. They try to cover as many edges, as many if you are looking at the CFD, as many edges as possible. So that is a way for you to prioritize. And then back to your question, yes. So fuzzing is a way that you can prioritize your path, and that there are existing research that talks about how to prioritize input so that you can prioritize path in different way. And my opinion is that there won't be a good answer, or say the good answer. There will always be just like maybe depending on the program, depending on some properties of the program, what is the best way for you to prioritize those inputs. There won't be a unified way that will work for all the programs in terms of input prioritization. You really have to see, for example, what types of vulnerability that you look into. Do you look into more like memory corruption, or do you look into more specific types of vulnerability, like not only just memory corruption, but more specific? And also it depends on your program's type. For example, if your program has something that is heavily related to say like coding, encoding, or crypto, then you want to prioritize probably those types of input that help you cover most of the path that within the crypto or without the crypto. You may have, you need to decide which part of the program that you want to focus on, you want to prioritize in order to get the correct input that will go to that specific part of the program. Yep, that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that helped.
Awesome. We have another question that came offline. Would be interesting to know how to build bots that attack each other, like in Cyber Grand Challenge.
Sure. So I am not involved in a Cyber Grand Challenge, but I am very familiar with the 2 teams. One is the champion team, Mayhem, because that is my advisor's startups team, and I'm also familiar with Shellfish. So that is a huge question, like how to build a bot to do that. You can start with how to find a vulnerability, and then how to convert from a discovered vulnerability, maybe an input a POV, or say like a crash, how to turn that from a crash to an actual working exploit. So in CGC, you don't have to really have a working Axel in the sense that you can get the root, get the shell, but you need to at least show that, for example, like RP is tainted, RP is controllable, something like that. So then I will say there are research-wise, they're all open research, how to find a bug, how to turn from a crash to a POV. And those are also interesting research questions that I'm personally interested into. My lab is interested in it, and we hope that if you're interested, feel free to contact me. But like, I'll back to this, how to build a bot. I think you need to find a bug, have a way to convert that, and then also, if you want to have a bot that really launch an actual exploit, such as have a shell, then you want to have a right payload so that it can be assembled with the crash or the POV that you have created. So that's a very simple 3 steps in order to have a attacking bot. Hopefully this helps, but also like when I say this 3 steps, I definitely underclaim it. It's gonna be more difficult than what I just speak.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for your talk and for explaining about giving an overview of CTFs. Actually, as part of ShaktiCon, we have organized a Women Unleashed CTF called Shakti CTF, and it has received a lot of attention from women all across the globe. And also the organizer of this conference, Amrita University. We have our own CTF team called InCTF, and which is actually the #1 CTF team in India in 2020, and was also ranked 35th worldwide. So I see that this as an opportunity. Maybe we could collaborate and have launch CTFs for more women in the world and to reach to more students and get them into security.
Yep, sounds good. I would like to see further collaborations with you guys. I'm very excited about that.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I don't see any more questions.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
Yeah, there's one more question. What tools do you use for building game theoretic models? Like simulation.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Tools?
Oh, what tools do I see?
What simulation tools do you use for building game theoretic models?
I don't really use simulation tools. We do simulate cyber grand challenge, but we just write the script that simulated. There's no certain simulation tool. And then when we build the game theoretical model, we just we use an existing model. We call it partial observable stochastic game, and we apply that model to the CGC or to the cyber game setup, and we set it up by adding more related parameters in like detection, like those kind of detections, those kind of cybersecurity related parameters into the game, and then we try to use existing but with a better like we train the algorithm and we change the algorithm, existing algorithm, so that it can fit with our setup, also satisfy the scalability requirement in order to make the game model solvable. So we don't really use a specific tools, but we mostly just do that by ourselves.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for taking your time to talk about CTFs and about your research. It's very interesting, and I know it's late evening, but we have more interesting sessions coming up. So it'd be nice if you can stay and listen to it. And have a nice evening, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for hosting the conference. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.